Many of you have heard of the Milgram experiment, Yale, 1961. A man in a white coat tells you to shock a stranger. 65% of people they studied went all the way to lethal voltage, electrically shocking a stranger to death, or so they thought. The lesson we were all taught from this is that ordinary people comply. Authority wins. But here's what they never told you. 35% refused. Over a third of people looked at that man in a white coat, the ultimate symbol of institutional authority, and simply said, no. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments, you've heard the statistic, 75% of people denied what their own eyes were telling them to fit in with the group. The headline, social pressure is stronger than truth. But here's what they buried. 25% of people in those studies never conformed, not once across any trial. The Stanford Prison Experiment. Students were randomly assigned to be guards or prisoners. Now, the guards became monsters, and the prisoners broke. That's the story. But at least one guard refused to dehumanize, and one prisoner did something extraordinary. When offered a doctor inside the trial, he demanded a lawyer. He broke the psychological frame of the entire experiment by insisting on his identity outside the role they gave him. Now, we've spent 60 years studying the people who complied. We built textbooks around them. We used these examples to argue that human nature is weak. But we barely asked what made the others different. This question is not academic anymore, because right now in 2026, the experiment is no longer in a lab at Yale. It's on our streets. It's in the ICE raids that are snatching people and imprisoning them without due process by the tens of thousands, and including some American citizens. It's the National Guard occupations of American cities. It's the surveillance state that now tracks our every digital footstep. And it's in NSPM 7, a national policy, a presidential policy that officially redefines dissent as domestic terrorism. In case you didn't know, now you know. Disagreeing with the government is now legally framed as terrorism. We all know where that leads. Let's name what's happening plainly. The United States is running dozens of concentration camps. My grandfather survived the Nazi concentration camps, 2 years there, including lots of torture that eventually killed him, so I do not use that word lightly. Concentration camps are defined as mass detention without trial, inhumane conditions, and suspension of habeas corpus, no access to a lawyer. That is, factually, what is happening to tens of thousands of people inside this country under the guise of immigration enforcement, and they have begun grabbing American citizens. We are living, friends, in very dangerous times. But here's what the regime is counting on. They're counting on the 65%. They're counting on compliance. They're counting on you believing the old story that people obey, that resistance is futile, and that you are alone. But the resistors in those experiments prove otherwise. And the conditions that produced them, what made them different, that's documented, it's clear, and it is entirely within your control. Let me tell you the 4 factors that actually predict successful, enduring resistance. None of them are what you'd expect. First, prior reflection on authority. The resistors had already asked themselves in calm times before the crisis hit, under what conditions will I refuse? Where are my actual red lines? They weren't cynics. Cynicism is passive. It says nothing matters. It costs nothing and it provides nothing. Resistors are the opposite. They've done the work in advance, so they can do it when it matters. So when the man in the white coat tells them to shock a stranger, they didn't have to decide under pressure in a panic. They had already decided before. So, I need you to ask yourself that question tonight. Write down your red lines. Because the person who has answered in advance arrives at the moment of pressure, whenever that pressure comes, with something that the unprepared person lacks, a pre-formed no that protects your integrity. Second thing, a concrete anchor outside the consensus. Every resistor had something to hold on to that the system could not reach. For some, it was a professional oath. For others, a religious conviction. For some, a relationship, a child watching a mentor whose respect mattered more than any bureaucrat's approval. For some, it was just a fact, a single piece of primary evidence that they had read and understood themselves and could not be convinced otherwise. Now, the system is very good at trying to replace your anchor points. It redefines evidence. It delegitimizes your sources. It makes what you saw with your own eyes feel less real than whatever they'd like to tell you on your screen. So your job is to find your anchor now. A principle, a person, a fact that exists independently of any institution. Name it. Write it down. Because when the pressure comes, that anchor is what holds you in place. Third, and this one is huge, at least one other person. In Milgram, I need you to hear this because I was blown away. In Milgram, when a single person in that cohort refused to continue, compliance rates from everybody else dropped from 65% to 10%. 85% of the people who were complying stopped when they had one visible example of courage. Just one. Now, this is why social media is not just a distraction, it's a resistance tool. Because you can be that one person for someone else. You can post the thing, you can share the document, you can say the quiet part out loud. And somewhere, someone who you may never know, who thought they were all alone, will see you and think, all right, I'm not crazy, I'm not alone, permission granted, I can hold. The resistors of the COVID era didn't operate in isolation. They found each other on Signal and private email chains in the relief of discovering that someone else who saw clearly had been looking for them too. You don't need a movement. Not yet. You need one person. Build that relationship now, before you need it. Fourth and last, the willingness to tolerate social pain. I need to be honest with you, this part hurts. The resistors felt the pressure. Family dinners became arguments, colleagues stopped returning calls, professional communities closed ranks and excluded them. There's a specific loneliness to holding a position that everyone around you has decided is not just wrong but dangerous. But here's the math that you do in your head. The social pain of resistance is acute, strong, sharp, visible, and time-limited. But the moral injury of compliance against your own conscience is chronic, hidden, and compounds across years, and means that you can never again look in the mirror and trust yourself. The damage of acting against your own conscience, of looking back at your choices and finding a person that you are not proud to be, that corrodes you from the inside. The resistors tolerated the social pain because they understood the alternative was worse. Not because they were brave, not because they were insensitive to it, of course they felt it, but because they'd done the math. Now, what does all this mean for you right now? It means that resistance is not about being a hero. It's about preparation. You are better positioned than any generation before you because you have what Milgram's subjects didn't: global visibility of dissent. You can find the one person. You can be the one person. You can watch a video like this and realize, I'm not alone. So here's your 5-step manual. Simple, actionable. Do it today. 1. Read the history of institutional failure. Thalidomide, Tuskegee, tobacco science, the suppression of lead's neurological damage. Not to become cynical, to become calibrated. To understand that authoritative consensus has been wrong before, captured before, counter to the people's interests before. That knowledge is armor. 2. Practice disagreement in low-stakes situations. Moral courage is a muscle. Use it at dinner. Use it in group chats. Say, I'm not sure I agree, when it costs little, so that you can say no when it costs everything. 3. Find your anchor point. Write it on a note in your wallet. A principle, person, an oath, a fact. Something the state cannot touch. 4. Build your network. Find one person, just start with one, who shares your commitment to honest evaluation. Not a conspiracy circle, not an echo chamber. One person who will say, yes, that's real, when the gaslighting around you is at full strength. And 5, teach this to your kids, your students, your friends, anyone who will listen. This is not ideology, it is psychological preparation. Name the mechanisms, tell the history, show them 35%. The regime wants you to believe that resistance is futile, impossible, that you're alone, that you'll break. Everyone does. The experiments prove otherwise. 35% refused to administer those electric shocks. 25% held to the truth of what they could see with their own eyes in the face of unanimous opposition. One guard refused to dehumanize. One prisoner demanded a lawyer. This is proof that the situation does not determine the outcome. Conscience, prepared in advance, can hold. They have not fully consolidated power yet, and they cannot as long as genuine, principled resistance lives in the hearts and minds of the people. You are not born a resistor. You are built, and you start building new. Before the music starts, before the knock on the door, before the test that's already being designed. Build it now.